Welcome to Root Cause. I'm Nune. This is where we get to the root cause of things. Be that architectural decisions that aged badly, leadership transitions nobody prepares you for, or the hype cycles that keep repeating themselves. If you have ever thought, am I crazy for questioning this? You are in the right place. Today's conversation is a little different. We're not debugging a system or root causing a migration. We're root causing something more personal. Why the people who know the most tend to say the least, and what that costs them. My guest today is Marc Babin, a hospitality marketer turned creative director turned podcast builder. Marc spent 4 years doing digital marketing for Westin Marriott in Cayman Islands, where he made 106 videos with zero video experience. Then he moved to Vienna, spent 6 years at Anyline building an entire content infrastructure from scratch. 12 different podcasts across different industry verticals, over 100 episodes, and a bronze at the Transform Awards Europe. And now, as of this year, he's launched the podcast Blueprint, helping others do what he has done. Here's why Marc is on the show today. He's the person I work with on my own personal brand and content strategy. So this is not a cold interview. This is a conversation with someone who has seen my perfectionism, my frustration with the algorithm, and my general discomfort with being visible online up close. And I think that honesty is going to make this one worth listening. So Marc, welcome to Root Cause, and I'm genuinely glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. Obviously, it's a great pleasure and an honor to be first on what will be a large show, but also to you. And I want to make sure that I say this first, like, congratulations on taking this step, this first step, not only into the podcasting world, obviously so many things that we've spoken about in the past about getting here, but also for taking those little steps and, rearranging the room and getting the equipment, but committing to making those little steps. Obviously, all of that sort of has contributed to, where we are today, hitting record for the first time, which is like a monumental moment, and one I do want you to like take a moment and sit with. Like, you hit record for the first time on your show. That's epic, and a massive congratulations to you. And thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for being on this road. I mean, you have been a tremendous help. Both technically and mentally supporting.
Mentally maybe first, yeah.
Yeah. What I wanted to talk to you about is firstly the sheer volume of content nowadays. Like, even before AI, content was everywhere, and now with AI, it's faster, it's louder. And your entire career is around content, marketing, video, podcasts. Do you think content making is still a valid path to marketing or to even self-expression, or has the sheer volume just destroyed it?
So absolutely yes to the first part of that question. I think the volume hasn't killed it, and I'll explain that a little bit. But if content marketing is still a valid point, the answer is absolutely yes. So most of what's flooding the internet right now, most of what we see, and this, it's noise. Everyone knows this. It's noise. I'd say, my own estimate, and this doesn't come from anywhere, this is just based on my experience, I'd say 70% of it has zero real marketing value, right? It's a lot of just noise for doom scrollers, but that's actually good news. I genuinely think that's good news, because it means the bar for standing out, for breaking through of that noise, is completely achievable. And I know this because I've done it multiple times in multiple formats, in multiple industries, and it does work if you can break out of that noise cycle. So good, authentic, powerful content, I believe, still cuts through. Like I said, I've watched it happen firsthand, building podcasts, building videos, like you mentioned in that introduction. I know we'll get into a little bit those later on, but B2B, B2C, it doesn't really matter. Good, authentic content will still cut through. And the opportunity to do that is very real. It's very achievable for most people. I think people get afraid that they're just going to fall into that noise and just be unheard like everyone. And I know we're going to, again, get kind of into that a little bit more. The mistake marketers make is treating content like a calendar filling exercise. Like they just check it off the list of the daily tasks. I got to make posts for Monday. And I fall into this as well. Everyone falls into this little downbeat, cloudy, like I got to get this done. I got to make content for the week. And that's the mistake. And I have to always remind myself, even, that don't think of it like that, right? People who produce content and they actually care about what they're making, social managers who care about what's being published, those are the ones that succeed. I've worked with some incredible, even in my last role, I worked with an incredible social manager who genuinely cared about what went out and fought to make sure that the content being made was genuine. And that makes a real difference. That makes them stand out from the noise. It's tangible. We see it in the results all the time.
Yeah, two things to that. I can feel it on myself whenever I force myself to be on a schedule, and the algorithms sort of make you do that because the more you are on schedule, the better, as everyone says. But the moment it becomes scheduled, it also becomes a job, and you start hating it, and you start squeezing the content out of yourself. Whereas you want to say when you want to say things and not force yourself to do that. Regarding the reality and being real, you do think the AI generated content will always be visible, meaning people will differentiate you from the AI, or will it be at some point undistinguishable?
I think it will always be distinguishable. It just gets, you need to just be more aware. And I think we see this in the real world all the time now, where an image is posted or a video, and we see the comment section is always like, please tell me this is real, or please tell me this is fake. And comment saying this is obviously AI. So that will obviously, as AI improves, that's going to be harder and harder to distinguish from looking at it as a thing. So those 15-second clips, the noise, right? That'll always be a little bit more difficult to distinguish because it's such a short piece. But when we talk about content that matters, content that has purpose, that will always be easier to tell what's real and what's not. You're never going to see a full AI generated podcast that you're going to know is fake, right? Like it's going to be real just by based how people talk and the tone of voice. The imperfection is the real truth. Yeah, it's the humanity. People relate with imperfection. And in a world where everything we see is perfect in AI gen, again, what stands out? That imperfection, that real human authenticity. That will never be, I mean, I hope not. Maybe that's a future conversation to have, but that will never be replicated in the way that the pauses I take, the ums, the ahs, like all of this tells the listener that I'm listening to a real person. I was told, and maybe you know this probably better than I do, those checkboxes on websites and forums, right? Like check the box if you're not a robot, those whole things. I was told back, and this is always stuck in my head, the whole concept of this is they were designed to find imperfection and imperfect ways of checking those boxes. So if there that box shows up on a window, this is going to change every for everyone listening, the way we see these boxes now. But it's really kind of relatable, where if that box shows up on a window, if it's a spam bot, if it's an AI bot, if it's a robot, it will just straight line for that check and click. Whereas a human will never just straight line. There's going to be imperfection in the way we move, the way we think about it, the timing it takes. That imperfection is what allows us to pass the checkbox quiz, right? It's not about checking the box. A robot can check the box, but it's the imperfection in that process. So it's the same with content. AI is not a straight line. It's a prompt and a response. The prompts may evolve and the response may evolve, but it's still a straight line. Humans don't think in that way. We reason, we question, we pause, we make mistakes. I used to say, and this is really good, so I used to say that content is king. And I think that was something that everyone was saying, and I said it, I believed it, I drank the juice. I did believe it, but it's not true anymore. Content is not king. Good content is king. Good, authentic content is king. And it's important that content creators know the difference there.
Yeah, true. I mean, the amount of sci-fi that has proven that the imperfection is what makes you human. I think that was said a lot of times.
Yeah.
You mentioned something about 15-second clips. I mean, they call this a real thinking generation, and the attention span. I mean, you just swipe next. And here we are sitting here talking. I think it will be at least 30, 40 minutes that we do this. Who has time to listen to two people talk about anything these days? Given that, do you think podcasting is still a valid path for marketing?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. But here's what I find actually quite fascinating about it is our perception versus what the actual information tells us. And this is where we look at, data-driven insights overshadowing what we think. So the data actually pushes back on this premise, right? That the short attention span. Podcast listening has gone up, not down, even as short form has exploded. So short form has exploded and the attention span on those short clips, yeah, swipe, 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 swipe. But it's a different piece of content. And I'll talk about that a bit later on. But the stats don't lie. I think, so one of the reports I have a stat pulled up here. It was a US-based report. It showed that podcast listeners in the US have 773 million hours of listens per week. So that's a 350% jump since 2015. So something else is going on, right? This isn't just about attention spans. Like podcast listening has go up. I think what people really are starved for isn't just short content, it's content that respects their intelligence, right? A 15-second reel can entertain you for 15 seconds, 10 seconds, 5 seconds, but then you're on to the next one. You're not gaining anything from that. It can't change how you think about something. It cannot build real trust with an audience. All these scrolls you do you know any of the followers? These are just bot accounts, fake accounts. They're just looking for likes to make a paycheck or something. Like you can't build value there. So podcasters do things a little differently, and that's why I think it works and why it's still growing. And here's the other piece to the puzzle. Context matters, right? And we always talk about context. When someone puts in their earphones or their earbuds and they're headed for a drive to work or they're doing a workout and they're listening to a podcast, they're not doom scrolling. They're completely in a different headspace. They chose to do that. They chose to listen to that show. And that's an incredibly valuable piece of marketing that is very much untouched in this way still. So it's important to see that distinction, that short form and long form, they're not competing. They live in two different worlds. Yes, they're all on one device. Yes, it's all content, but they're not competing. They serve completely different jobs. And the mistake is assuming that attention spans have shrunk, as you mentioned, across the board. I think what's actually happening is people have become more selective about how they choose to spend that time. They'll give you 15 seconds of low commitment while in bed, on the sofa, while watching a Netflix show, but they'll also give you an hour if you've earned it. And that is why I literally dropped everything I had going on career-wise to build the business I have now, to share my passion for this format, because podcasting is about earning that time, and that's very much undertapped.
Yeah, that's exactly the reason I decided to have a root cause, because I want some, real content, real conversations, and the amount of content that is not real, even if it's not AI generated, it's not real, and you feel like, why don't I create that content if I'm not finding it? So yeah, I agree with that. One thing I was curious about is, in your previous position in Anyline, you made podcasts about topics that, let's say, are not sexy or entertaining. This is automotive, tire tech, retail, logistics. You and I did an episode on power and utilities.
Years ago.
How do you make that kind of content interesting? Or you don't have to, because it's about choosing the audience and context again.
100% correct. Yeah, you just answered the question for me. Basically, it's not interesting to a lot of people, but it's interesting to a few. And those few are who we were speaking to. The reason we didn't do, and I started, and again, I made mistakes. The reason when we first started the podcasting at Anyline was because COVID happened and we lost the ability to touch people like we would at events, to have those natural, raw conversations. We did the webinar cycle. Everyone did the webinar cycle. It fizzled out, right? Once everyone started doing it, it just became like everyone competing for the same space. And it was just a big sales conversation, and it was people getting more and more pushy. So webinars had their own life, but the raw conversations with people, those just genuine connection points, lost. And that's why we started podcasting. And we did do a generic show in the beginning, but it was, again, I didn't know much about it. I dive first and look later. I learned that we had to be more specific about our targets. So we made different shows for different industries: automotive, retail, logistics, technology, AI. There was one more I can't remember, but we made the shows to speak to the few, not targeting quantity, but targeting quality. And by targeting by targeting the quality of those people listening, we were able to have much more in-depth talks with people because we knew the people listening were interested. So yeah, you're right. Boring topics, absolutely boring topics. Talking about tire technology and talking about the latest AI robot for the logistics field. For 99% of the people, that's not really interesting, but we were never targeting the 99% of people. We were targeting the 1% of person who might get something out of that and then reach out and have a conversation with us. And it was because of that super niche focusing that we built the audiences we had on those channels, very dedicated, and it grew. You think you're talking to a niche group of people, but there's so many people in the world that niche group of people is still large enough to build an audience out of. And we grew it to the point where people were asking us to be on the show because they heard us. And that's how you've kind of more or less made it a success, is when people want to be on your platform. And so that's how we made it interesting. We forgot about everyone else. We focused on who we wanted to speak to and spoke to those people. This wasn't a 101 conversation. This was like a 501 conversation. This was an elevated discussion with experts about expert topics. And that filtered who listened, and that made it a better audience for us.
Yeah, niche down, as they say, and you still
Niche
find
down.
yourself with a lot of people in that niche.
Absolutely. Yeah. And people forget that. People do forget that there's a lot of people out there, right?
Yeah, true.
And everyone is obsessed with the fame and popularity, and I want millions of this and millions of this, but just start chipping away, right? Those numbers will come. Our show, our automotive show, our biggest show at the end of the day, I think when I left the company, we were probably around 3 million views.
Nice.
And revenue generating show, it was successful. But again, we were talking about super niche topics, but we chipped away at it episode by episode, year by year. Long game. You have to play the long game with this stuff.
Yeah, I'm honestly just out seeking my people,
That's it.
And
That's
hopefully that will make it a success.
It will.
So you mentioned sales briefly, and I'm gonna be here intentionally naive. You once told me I'm not good at sales, I'm a marketing guy. And to be honest, in my head was like, isn't it kind of the same? Meaning that for tech per people, everyone that's not in tech, sales, marketing, PR, these are people who talk with people versus people who talk with computers. I'm asking this because I think a lot of the tech people, they don't want to be selling themselves, and marketing feels like you going out there and saying, look, I'm so cool. And it always feels a bit weird, especially for people who have imposter syndrome. And a lot of the tech professionals do have that, I know. Yeah. So what do you tell them? How do they get out of that feeling? Or what's the difference?
Yeah, honestly, you're not wrong. You're not completely wrong. I think people get precious about distinctions, and they're often not. They are the ones who aren't very good at either of them, right? And so here's how I actually try to think about it. Sales is a conversation with one person at a time. You're trying to move that one person to a decision, usually on their timeline or on their budget, or trying to push product, but you're trying to push the one person. Marketing is kind of that same conversation, right? But it's at scale. And before they're even ready to buy, way above the funnel, early in the pipeline, you're not closing anyone. Your goal is not to close anyone on a decision. Your goal is not to move their timeline. You are trying to make sure that when that moment comes, they already trust you. And this is the brilliance of what marketing, the distinction between marketing and sales is that trust building exercise. And those that get it right make the sales process much easier down the line, make that closing process much easier down the line. Again, coming back to podcasting being one of the best examples I've seen for this, think about what happens when someone has listened to your show for, I don't know, 4, 6 months, 8 months. They feel like they know you, right? You listen to them, they listen to you, they feel like they know you. They trust your thinking, they trust your process, how you deliver. They've heard how you handle hard questions, your authenticity spills through, right? That's not selling. But by the time that person enters your sales process, if they enter your sales process, half the work's already done, right? They know you, they know everything about you. You don't have to do that part of it. Anything you want to try to sell to them, they're going to listen. And that's the hard part done. So yeah, marketing is about moving people, but the best marketing never feels like that, and that's the whole point of it. That's why I love it. So, to come back to that quote of mine, so thank you for that. I guess the more accurate phrase now is, I'm not good at closing, I'm good at storytelling, right? I'm good at relationship building. So it's not so much that I don't enjoy the sales process, I don't enjoy the closing process. And that's why I call myself a marketer. I'm a storyteller, and I help move the needle, make it easier for the sales team.
You're in for the long game.
Yeah, 100%. The marketing is very much a long game. I think I'm going to touch on this a little bit later on with one of your questions, but the work I do today does not affect tomorrow, right? Recording this episode now isn't going to change your world tomorrow, but it will change things in 3-6 months. Rather than by not doing this now, your 3 to 6 months is also going to look different, right? But your tomorrow will be the same. So
yeah, to be honest, when I started, I'd say putting myself more online, what I thought of is when I join a project, any project, and I start working with the people in the project, usually first impressions are that people are a bit skeptical, and you have to earn their trust during the project. Every meeting you have, every meeting you're not late to and you're prepared to, every task you promise and you deliver, that kind of builds the trust, and you don't notice that, but months later they say, oh, it's so nice to work with Nuna. Nuna is great. And every project you repeat that months of trust building. And then I thought, wait, I need to externalize that. I need to put this out once. So when people Google Nuna and they find me and they watch my videos, that months of building trust is kind of shortened at least a bit, because in these conversations, I'm going to say what I think and speak the way I usually speak. And that would hopefully already show some genuine side of me and cut that onboarding part shorter. That was
well, it's not even just the onboarding part shorter, but I mean, you're talking about relationship with a person in a business setting, in a professional setting. That's a hard thing to build when you walk into a room cold, right? If you go on a sales call, like let's just come back to the sales topic. Like if you walk into a sales call and you've never met that person, not only are you trying to push them a product that they may need, they may not need, but you're also trying to build a relationship in that short time also, right? That's a lot to accomplish. And that's why good salespeople are good at what they do. And I respect them 100% for what they're able to do, because they're going and establishing a relationship, trying to show as much authenticity, whether it's falsified authenticity or whatever, that's a separate conversation. But they're trying to build this relationship and then give them something, right? Like, think of a car dealer salesperson, right? The good ones aren't the ones who just say, "Hey, which car do you want? Come take a drive." Those are the aggressive ones. The ones who can, what are you after? Oh, I have a family also. I love that. Like, they can establish
Mm.
some relatability. Those are the ones that succeed in sales. And it's the same thing with what you just mentioned, right? If you have a long relationship with someone that you've built over time and you finally meet them, you can just advance right to the technical talks. It's the same on
Exactly.
sales. So this is why I'm such a big fan of the long game when it comes to awareness based marketing and content based marketing. Is it can yeah, I should stress that it can help to build trust between a brand and a person and a person, right?
Mm.
You're going to do this show, you're going to speak to a lot of people. When you do approach people in the future and you say, "Hey, I want to talk about this business opportunity," that's going to be a lot easier because they've listened to you, they know you, they understand you. Maybe they know someone you've spoken to, so that credibility checks out. So there's all these elements and variables at play, and people very much undervalue what that can bring. They just, "Oh, it's too much work. It's long game. It's 6 months from now," but that matters.
You've worked in corporate brand strategy for years, and you said B2B, B2C, that doesn't matter. Do you really think it's sort of the same? Now you have the podcast Blueprint, and I think you are going to help both companies and people. Do you approach this differently, or is it sort of all same? And why do you think today, I mean, in this day and age, it's also important for a single person to work on their social presence, their marketing, or is it enough if they sort of go with their company and don't try to express their own brand, let's say, out there?
Yeah, I mean it's easier said than done, right? I think coming to your first part of your question on the B2B versus the B2C, for me, I've built a process and I've been refining that process that is universal in the way that as long as the process is followed, it's just the messaging that changes, right? So you don't have to change the process. You stick to the fundamentals of how to build a good show, how to build good content. It's the messaging that changes. So for me, having worked in both, the lessons, if I were to go back and start over in the hospitality world again, I would approach it with this process and it would lead to a successful piece of content. So that I don't think changes. To your point about visibility and having content, like yourself who's an expert in what they do, but you've been busy, right? You've been busy and then you become in this spin cycle of, "Oh, I'm too busy to post. No one's going to watch it anyway. What's the point?" So I think it's really well said and it's really well defined because I think a lot of people feel that way, and I completely agree. It comes directly back to what we were talking about earlier with noise, right? The loudest voices online are often the ones with the most time to be loud, not the
Exactly.
most experience to share, right?
Exactly.
It's the ones who are aggressively posting on social media all the time and doing all the comments. They have time to do that. Like, so there's your first sort of like red flag, right? For those on the flip side of that, who, like yourself, are experts, professionals, want to make a brand, but are afraid of just falling into the noise, there are elements like AI is obviously starting to lower the barrier, which is genuinely exciting, but it's also a trap, right? If a 15-year veteran starts auto generating LinkedIn posts that sound like everyone else with the same emoji dots, right? And the same, "If I didn't do this, I would do," like, we've all seen it, right? We've all seen it. They've just joined the noise. They haven't cut through it. They're going to lose that credibility, and that credibility is the whole asset, right? You can't outsource a point of view. And that's really important to know. So, the answer to your question, if we're talking about personal branding like yourself, why does it matter right now? Because trust is the scariest thing to achieve, but it's also the scarcest thing on the market right now, right? Authentic and trust is the hardest thing to find because while anyone can produce content, not anyone can produce content that makes you think, this person actually knows what they're talking about, right? That little gap, that little sliver, that's the
Yeah.
opportunity with you. That's the opportunity we're trying to find, right? You know a lot about what you're doing, and you don't want to fall into that hole where it just becomes noise. So for people that are too busy building to be performing, like you've done for many years, like many executives out there, I'm going to come back to the podcasting world because it's my bread and butter right now. There is no better way than podcasting short videos that will show the most natural form of yourself, in the most natural format. So you're not just writing a post like everyone can do. You're not crafting a caption with AI. You're just talking about what you know, the way you talk about it with a colleague, right? That's where the real expertise comes out. An audience will feel the difference. They will see that immediately, and that's why they will, again, coming back to making the decision to tune in and watch. That's why they will do that.
Yeah, this is what I actually want to encourage the people who are busy building things do, because this is what we as a community of IT people or community of people who has been around for a long time to see what is hype, what is real. This is what we need. We need people who are building things, who are experienced, to talk, to also find a little bit of time to maybe set up this infrastructure around their content building. And yeah, it took some time, but once you set it up, once you have your groove, it's similar to setting up your tech environment. I mean, every developer knows what you need to have your environment comfortable. Starting from notebook, ending from software on it, you need to have everything at hand. And then once you have it, you're crazy productive. And I think it's same here. Once you set everything up, then you can just do it while you build, hopefully.
That's it. And talk to me about the excitement that you got from setting it up, right? Like, I mean, we had those conversations, but like to share it here, getting the equipment, seeing the quality, setting up your environment, your space, it's like you re-motivate yourself to do it, right? Like it's like, This is actually really cool.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think a lot of the techies are also into equipment of any kind, and this is a trap because from one side, you want to set it up and just be done with it. From another side, once you get a good mic, you're all about the sound. Once you get a good camera, you're all about setting it up perfectly and making some videos and just having fun with it. So yeah, the process of setting it up kind of fuels into the making of the content. So I definitely can relate to that.
Yeah, it helps motivate you through that build process a little bit. And then the next level of anxiety kicks in with, okay, well, now I actually got to use it, right? So, but if you built it, they will come.
Yeah, it's both frustration and fun. But I think that's also what building products is about. It's both frustration and fun, or maybe anything you do that you enjoy has those both elements in it.
100% agree.
There's one thing that ties experts together. It's usually the perfectionism trap. I mean, I think you've seen it. I took a long time until I'm like, yeah, all right, I'm ready to hit the record because I wanted this to be perfect and then to be perfect. And you've said once, embrace the imperfection and let your content be real. For somebody who built the whole career around precision and making sure 1,000 tests pass before you deploy something to production, that advice to just be real and get things out there, it's also a bit of a personality change. So what would you tell to me or to other people who suffer from perfectionism in regards to content making?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. And I have seen it. And I say that with full respect because it usually comes from the best people, right? And I do genuinely believe that the ones who care the most about quality are the ones who are paralyzed by it. That's the reality, right? But here's where I'd reframe what this has a little bit. So your career those listening in that perfectionism, those people who are perfectionists, your career was built on precision because the stakes at the time in that moment demanded it, right? A wrong decision, a bad brief, a miscalculated product launch, those have real and immediate consequences. So your brain learned over time, over and over and over, get it right before it goes out, right? And that, I think, defines what a perfectionism thinks. I've been so long removed from that. I'm trying to embrace that mindset as much as I can here. But content doesn't work that way, and I think it's really important that people know that distinction. The cost of an imperfect post, almost zero. Who cares, right?
Nobody
But the cost
cares.
of exactly, yeah. But you're right. No one cares. That's the kind of that's what makes it imperfect, I guess. But the cost of never posting is enormous because no one knows you exist. Right? I'll say that again because I think it's really important to know. The cost of an imperfect post is zero, but the cost of never posting is huge because no one knows you exist. So that I think is really important to know. And here's I've seen it again and again. The content that performs the best is rarely the most polished. It's the most honest. It has the most mistakes or flaws. A 60-second video where someone says something real, unscripted, they'll outperform perfectly produced 2-minute pieces almost every time. Audiences aren't looking for a broadcast, right? They're looking for a person. I have one example, and I don't think he'll mind me sharing. I'll just leave his name out. In my last role, we were obviously creating a lot of content around technology and a product. One of our sales executives at the time just went out and made a video about this thing on his own, like with his camera, and he just showed around what he was doing and then posted it. And the marketing team, myself included, like, we freaked out. Like, no, don't do that. Take it down. It has so many like things wrong with it. Like, that's not how this works. There's errors. It takes too long. Like, all these things. We freaked out. It was the most performing piece of content his channel has ever seen. It outperformed anything we've ever made. But this just, I mean, you can't manufacture that. That happens, it's a shooting star. But this is the reality of what people, this is why it succeeded, because it showed the imperfection. And there's an art to creating content that shows imperfection. And I love this art because it shows how easy, how unscripted you can make it look. And I think there's an art to that, like I said. But my actual advice is don't lower your standards, just redirect them. If we're talking back to that perfectionism, stop asking, is this perfect? And start asking, is it true? Is it useful? Does it even sound like me? Right? If the answer is yes to any of those, post it. Post it. The cost of not posting it is bigger than the cost of posting it. So separate that perfectionism in your mind to the perfectionism you have in your work life, in your product life, because you need to be perfect there. Absolutely respect that. But when it comes to producing content, do your best to put that perfectionism aside, because the cost of not doing it is much higher than the cost of doing it, even if it's bad.
Yeah, I like that part with sort of rewriting the acceptance criteria of not the content itself being perfect, but you inside it being the most genuine self. And that, I think you can evaluate. Yeah, consider that the bar.
That's a nice way to put it, actually, I think.
And a lot of times when you even get past that perfectionism, and we spoke about it just now, and you post it, and you get 3 likes from your friends and 1 from your coworker, and that's it, and you feel like, why even bother? And also, once you have been, 15 years in something, you're usually good at that. And it's very hard to be not good at something. I think a lot of people in IT, they love learning. It's not a problem. That's the whole reason they are in IT. But sort of failing and doing something from zero that they have zero experience in, that sort of feels weird, and you feel even less confident than you were before. But I think I'm going to answer this one myself. Embrace that time when you don't have a lot of likes, and embrace that time when you don't have a lot of followers, because this is the place for you to try to play with things. To, as we said, nobody cares. You can put whatever content you want, try it out, see what you enjoy, so that you can keep going, instead of taking, this pressure of, did I get enough likes or not?
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I think what you're describing is real. Like, it's not a weakness, it's a reality, right? You spent 15 years, like you said, becoming someone of an expert whose opinion matters in a room. And now you're publishing something and the internet is silent, right? That's a genuine psychological hit. And don't let anyone tell you different, right? That is absolutely a hit. But I'm not going to give you the whole like trust the process BS, because I think that's not helpful in any way, and it's a cliche. But here's what I will push back on, and you kind of alluded to it. You're measuring the wrong thing, right? If all you're looking at is who's liking it, you're measuring the wrong thing. Let's say you make a post, you get 4 likes, right? That's 4 people who stopped scrolling on a platform designed and built to keep people moving. That's not for nothing, right? You have an idea of who those 4 people are. Maybe 3 of them are friends, 3 of them are family. But one of those people is maybe a decision maker at a company. You've been trying to get in front of them for years. So content works quietly, right? It works slowly. And then it doesn't. So the other thing I'd say here, you're not competing with the person who has hundreds and thousands of likes. So don't compare yourself to them, right? And you kind of alluded to this as well. Like, enjoy the process you're in, right? You're not competing with that person who has thousands of followers and thousands of likes on their post. You're competing with the version of yourself that didn't post anything. So if you got 4 likes, you're winning, because the person who didn't post anything has 0 likes. And again, that doesn't affect tomorrow, but that will affect something 6 months from now. I love the 6-month concept, because I do believe in that like half a year sort of like shadow effect. But everything you post lives forever. It exists forever. You never know when it's going to come back to life. It's working genuinely when you're sleeping, hitting other parts of the world. It'll be found by someone in that time. You don't know the perspective, you don't know the context they're in, you don't know the world they're in, but you don't get that from staying quiet. So don't compare yourself to the people getting a lot of results. Don't compare yourself to who you are in a boardroom having a huge reaction because you're an expert on something. Compare it to what you would do if nothing happened, right? Start small, be consistent with what you're doing, and stop checking the likes, because the likes don't matter. The likes are useless. It's an ego hit, but accept it. Like, the likes don't matter.
Yeah, that's definitely something we need to get comfortable with. I think there were definitely moments I thought LinkedIn has blacklisted me and I'm just shouting into the void. But
I know the feeling. I absolutely know the feeling. But again, you're seeing that because you're comparing it to what other people's posts are getting, right? Someone saw your post, someone read it, someone took something from it. Whether you speak to them down the line or not, someone took something from it. And who knows what that turns into. There you go.
That's enough.
I'll fill it up, yeah.
There's one other thing that sort of prevented me always from posting a lot online, and I think a lot of the 90s kids would relate to this. I've been online since 90s. And back then, and for a long period of time, until I woke up in 2026 and everybody's online, it was, you should not be online that much, meaning from the security perspective of it, just your name, your address, your email address, everybody tried to lessen the digital footprint. And then suddenly it's a losing game if you're doing that. So my question would be, how do you help someone navigate that shift from I need to be careful to sort of I have to do this, because then, as you said, nobody knows I exist if I don't do that.
Yeah, I love that you brought this up. Um, I think it's genuinely one of it's like an underlying, underrated tension for what we're talking about everything today, right? It's this whole shift from a way you used to think
Mm.
to the way you have to think now when it comes to online publicity and privacy. You didn't do anything wrong, right? That's instinct. Protect yourself, stay private, be careful. That was exactly the right instinct for that era. The internet was a different place.
Mm.
Anonymity was your armor, right? That was your protective layer. And then people who wore that armor well were the smart ones, right? Now it's not that privacy stopped mattering. It matters more, arguably, but it's that trust became a form of currency.
Mm.
And you can't build trust being anonymous. The internet grew up just like we all did, right? And became the primary place where professionals and professional relationships begin, right? That's how we first met, was over the internet years ago when we did the podcast. And that changed everything that you're doing now,
Yeah, I
right?
haven't thought of it. Actually, the first time you messaged me, I thought this must be some
Yeah,
scam or something until
there's
I
no
googled
link.
you, and I found some proof that you're not a scammer. So
Good. I'm glad
I
that
do
comes across. I'm
encourage
not.
I do encourage everybody to do their checks, of course, before they trust
Absolutely.
somebody. But yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
and again, the shift isn't the encouraging like abandon your privacy instincts. I think that's super important. It's just be intentional instead of invisible. This
Mm.
is a quote that I love, right? Be intentional instead of invisible. You don't have to share your life. I'm very adamant on what I share online and what I don't. Right? I have a big part of my life that I keep private, my
Yeah.
family, everything. What I put online is with intent, right? You don't have to perform if you don't want to. You don't have to let people see how you think. Your opinions on your industry, your take on a problem, the lessons from a project that didn't go away planned. These are things you can share, right? These are things that are not necessarily have to be private. You can't think of it as exposure. Just think of it as a conversation with someone, but you're having that
Mm.
conversation at scale. So, to those people who grew up protecting their identity online, making their digital footprint as small as it could be, right? You did that deliberately. Shift your way of thinking into the way of being what you put online now is with intent. And you can't build trust if that's the whole goal of everything we're trying to do. Build trust through content. You can't do that by staying quiet. And looping back to our conversation about noise, right? When we have feeds full of noise, that intent will cut through every single time. If you come out with content that has intent and purpose and authenticity, that will cut through the noise. And so it sort of voids the whole privacy element. You can still have that, still have it, but just partial it down, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think this cliche of talk to one person, I think that works, because if I think back of this time when I'm just onboarding into a project and I talk with my future colleagues, I don't go and share every single detail of my personal life. I share some part of my experience, the technical experience. I do joke sometimes, and that shows my personality. So I think if you think of that in that way, it's just that you're doing this for hopefully a million of people who will
Correct.
watch it. So
Absolutely correct.
mm,
Yep.
that the framing helps. Another cliche is the "just start" quote that everybody says. Just start a podcast, just start a post, and I want to talk about the gap between this advice and the reality, the discomfort of just starting, and how do you overcome that, and how do you help others overcome this discomfort?
I give most of my success to just starting, and I mentioned it earlier, like I jump first think and look second when it comes to types of content, but that's just my personality when it comes to making stuff. I'd rather make a mistake and learn how not to do it. And that comes from my sport background and like my athletics background. But for those people that are sort of afraid to make that jump and I guess close that gap, is just think, and again, it comes back to this whole concept of what happens if you don't.
Yep.
What happens if you don't start? Don't think about what happens if you start. If you don't do this, nothing's going to change. You're not going to gain anything. You're going to fall further behind. And that's what motivated me to start the projects that I was doing. You know, you mentioned it in the intro when I was at Marriott in the Caribbean. I didn't want to just do the content that every other hotel was doing because every other hotel was doing it and there was no fun in that. So
Yeah, that's boring.
it's boring. It's just box. It's life in a box. I didn't like that. I wanted to do something that broke the mold. I had an idea. I had no idea how to do it. And again, you mentioned this. I started like a YouTube channel by literally just buying a camera and a microphone. No experience, zero. I'm not talking like a little bit. Nothing. No experience. Nothing with editing, anything. And I just learned that this is, the first ones are not gonna be great, but I'm gonna be proud of what I put out and I'm gonna enjoy it and to just start. So there, because if I didn't start, nothing would have changed. So to kind of keep it short and simple for those people thinking about that whole starting process and the anxiety around starting, just think about what happens if you don't start. It's a much darker future.
Yeah, I think it's funny you mentioned sports. It's a lot like sports. It simply doing 5-minute exercise a day is so much more than just sitting on the couch.
Amazing
And
metaphor. Yeah, amazing.
the same with the
relatability.
content. Yeah, just
Yeah,
one post
little bits.
is endlessly more than zero.
Exactly. And I said it earlier, start small, but just be consistent with it, right? If you don't want to start a podcast tomorrow, fine, great. Like that's maybe way too big of a step for you.
Yeah.
Start just by commenting on other people's posts with your opinions on something. You know, I think this is really interesting, but here's my perspective of it. Like just start there. Just start doing something. And the metaphor you made is a great reference because it's like doing anything. Going for a 10-minute walk a day is better than not going for a 10-minute walk a day. So it's exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing.
Yeah, and I don't think you can walk in a wrong way, similarly as you can't express your opinion in a wrong way. It's your opinion.
It's your opinion, and that authenticity. I mean, you pick the fights you want to fight. Yeah. Like maybe don't go on the most aggressive tangents.
Hike.
But start small. Exactly. Yeah. Don't go count my Everest on your first gig, but just go for a nice easy walk. Just absorb. Take the steps you're comfortable with, but just get comfortable with being uncomfortable. In sport, that's one of the most common phrases. Is if you can do something easily, you're not pushing yourself hard enough, right? Yeah. Push yourself out of your comfort zone. That's the only way we grow. It's the only way we learn, right? Why do you pick up a new textbook? To learn something new. You're going outside your comfort zone. It's the same concept. So find a way in your mind to relate it to how you've broken through in your current success, in your current career, right? How have you learned more? How have you pushed products in a new ways? Did you try something that may fail, right? Just relate it to things you've done.
Yeah, true. Alrighty, so let's root cause this one last time. We talked about content noise. We talked about expert silence, the perfectionism trap, the trust problem, and as cliche as it sounds, just start it, just try it, embrace the silence you will get in the beginning for your experiment. Yeah, anything else I'm missing for the root cause of the experts being the most silent ones?
Taking a moment of silence to reflect. I think the real root cause, and I love that you framed it that way as a brand, is that somewhere along the way, highly capable people learn to do things separate than from what they know who they are. right? From that. So their expertise in their lives at work, in the room, in the decisions they make, the problems they solve, that's where they've always lived. And it's always been enough because the work spoke for itself, right? We've all been there in their careers. It spoke. That's all we had to do because that fit the gap, that filled the void we had. Putting it online feels different. It feels like claiming something, right? It feels like you're trying to take away attention from something else. Like saying, I have something worth hearing. And for someone who has spent a career letting the results do the talking, like many of you may have, like you may have, that feels uncomfortably close to arrogance.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you said it.
So they stay quiet because they're busy, right? Because they're an introvert, because visibility feels like, what's the word? Vanity, right? And they were never in it for the vanity. They were in it for the work, head down, do the job. The shift that actually changes things isn't a content strategy. It's a belief change. And you spoke about this earlier, right? How do you change my belief in this and the thinking around this? The moment someone genuinely accepts that their experiences have value beyond the room they're sitting in, that there's someone out there right now who needs exactly what they know and will never find it because they stayed quiet, that's when everything moves. So visibility isn't vanity. Be really clever and clear on that distinction. It's generosity. Think that's the reframe that actually unlocks a lot of people. And for me, when I started this, when did I make my first YouTube video? I was in, oh gosh, I'm going to date myself here. 16, 17, somewhere in that range. I'd have to go back and look at the YouTube page. It's still live. Oh gosh, I just said that loud.
People will find it.
Yeah, gosh, here we go. Well, I'll get the views for the resort. I started it because I wanted to share the destination with people more than put myself on camera. I wanted people to see what I was seeing, right? It wasn't about vanity for me. I wanted people to see it. It was about generosity. It was about people seeing that sunset at 4 or 5 in the morning. It was all these things I wanted people to see of the destination. That's why I started podcasting. I didn't want people to, I wanted to give voice to problems that real world was having. And that unlocked it for me. So I think that in that way of thinking, think about it as generosity, you giving your knowledge, what you know to other people. I think that can actually unlock a lot of people.
Yeah, I know a lot of people like me. They have the feeling that once you learn something, everybody knows that. It's obvious to everybody else, which is.
But the way you learned it is maybe different.
Yeah, and what also clicked for me is that somebody wrote, "You are somebody's step 5." So somebody's just starting in IT. Somebody's just learning what you are doing, and you are their point B. So they want to get there. And to at least to those people, you're saying something new. You're sharing your knowledge. You're being a good peer. And I think that matters.
Yeah, I love that.
So if someone is listening right now and they are finally convinced they need to start their podcast, what do they do besides obviously getting in touch with Marc and his podcast blueprint? What else can they do? Maybe there's a book. I'm a big book person, although you can't read your way into creating something. Yeah, you need to create something to create something. This is just
reading
like you
can detract. Yeah, let me read more. Let me read that other book.
Yeah. You can't read yourself into doing sports. Again, we have a lot of sports metaphors. You can read about being, safe while doing the sports and how your body works. But at some point, you just have to start. But
at some point, you got to open the door and go for a while. Yeah.
Maybe there are some books to start with, or courses, or anything.
So there are a lot of books that I do like. I think I like a lot about like the psychology of people and reading body language and things like this. This helps for a communicator.
I love that topic.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. My favorite book on that topic is from the 50s. It's called How to Read People Like a Book. It's very short. It's like super thin. It's written in the 50s, but it still applies perfectly to today. I read it, I don't know, once a month. It's just always a good
I'll
pickup.
link it in the
Yep.
description.
So I think that's a good one. But honestly, if they're looking to put their voice out there in any way, shape, or form, think about what you know and how you want to tell it, right? Maybe podcasting is not the right format. I know it's a strong format for a lot of topics and a lot of people. But start thinking about it, start absorbing what your world is, read a lot of stuff, comment on stuff, just start conversations, and I think that will teach you a lot about how you want to move forward. So if you do want to have that larger conversation, you have to have that strong foundation, and the stronger the foundation, the better the end result.
Yeah, I think what also helped me was less reading, more writing, not necessarily writing and posting, but writing for yourself, as they say, finding your voice, finding what do you want to talk about, finding some key points you want to mention, and they will change, but that's a starting point for you to form your content around that point.
100% agree. Yeah, 100% agree.
Alrighty. Thanks a lot for being my first guest. And as a first guest, you have a chance to help me establish a nice tradition, which is that every guest leaves a question for the next guest. And you don't know who it's going to be. I don't know who's that going to be. But yeah, they're going to receive your question.
Gosh, no pressure. No pressure. What can I ask someone who I have no relatability to? I guess kind of keeping on this whole theme that we're kind of talking about today, maybe I can follow something around that way. I guess I would ask, oh gosh, this is a lot of pressure.
Hopefully not something too specific.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to be generic enough, but keep it on brand here. Let's go with, what did you learn this week that you didn't share with others?
I love that.
So there's a little bit of thinking in there.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And yeah, that was Marc Babin, marketer, podcast builder, and someone who spent his career proving that the most powerful content isn't the loudest, it's the most real. If you're a senior professional sitting on years of knowledge and experience, wondering whether it's worth to put yourself out there, I think you just got your answer in 30 minutes. Find Marc at the Podcast Blueprint, and if this conversation made you think or learn something, share it with someone you think needs to hear this. I'm Nunem, and let's keep root causing this. Alrighty, we have it.
Amazing, we did it. All right, that was amazing.